Why did the wealthiest man in the state freeze when he saw a broken vase and a pair of scarred hands? I spent 25 years believing I was a clumsy, indebted burden to the woman who raised me, paying off medical debts that never existed. But when Elias Thorne grabbed my wrist, he didn't see a servant. He saw the son who had been stolen from him in smoke and ash. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Lucas. I'm 28 years old, and I have the hands of a monster. That's what the kids at school used to call me anyway. From the tips of my fingers all the way up to my elbows, my skin is a map of twisted, shiny scar tissue. The ridges are thick and white, pulling tight whenever I try to make a fist or hold something heavy for too long. According to the woman I call Mom, I did this to myself. You were a wild toddler, Lucas, Linda would tell me, usually while lighting her third cigarette of the morning. 3 years old and climbing on the stove, you pulled a whole pot of boiling oil right down on top of you. I ruined my credit score to pay for the skin grafts that saved your life. I'm still paying for it. That was the refrain of my life. I saved you. You owe me. Because of that debt, I was working my second double shift in a row on a Friday night. I wasn't just working any job. I was scrubbing dishes in the industrial kitchen of the Thorne Estate, the largest private residence in the state. Elias Thorne, a billionaire industrialist who made his money in shipping and logistics, was hosting his annual autumn gala. The kitchen was a war zone of stainless steel and steam. "Move it, Scarface!" Mr. Henderson, the catering manager, barked at me. He was a short man who wore a suit 2 sizes too tight and sweated profusely. He hated me. He hated looking at my arms, so he made me wear long sleeves even in the humid heat of the dish pit. We're running low on champagne flutes. If Mr. Thorne's guests have to drink out of their cupped hands, I'm taking it out of your paycheck. Yes, Mr. Henderson, I said, keeping my head down. I grabbed a rack of freshly sanitized glasses. The heat from the dishwasher burned through my shirt, irritating the sensitive skin on my arms, but I didn't complain. I couldn't afford to lose this gig. Linda had called me 3 times this morning. She said her landlord was threatening eviction again. She said her back was acting up, and she couldn't pick up her shifts at the diner. I knew the truth, of course. She wanted money for bingo and for my brother, Kyle. Kyle was Linda's biological son. He was 2 years younger than me, had perfect skin, a winning smile, and hadn't worked a legitimate day in his life. While I was scraping foie gras off china plates, Kyle was probably sitting on Linda's couch, playing video games on the console I had bought for his birthday. "Lucas," Henderson yelled again, "stop daydreaming. Get those glasses out to the main hall service station, now." I hoisted the heavy plastic rack. My hands trembled slightly. That happens sometimes. The doctor said it was nerve damage from the deep burns. Linda said it was just me being weak. I pushed through the swinging doors and stepped out of the humid kitchen into a different world. The main hall of the Thorne Estate was like something out of a movie. The ceilings were 30 feet high, draped in silk and crystals. A string quartet played softly in the corner, the music floating over the hum of polite conversation. The guests wore tuxedos and gowns that cost more than I made in a year. They held their drinks with effortless grace, their hands smooth and manicured. I moved quickly, trying to be invisible. That's the first rule of high-end catering. Be a ghost. I reached the service station tucked behind a massive marble pillar and began unloading the glasses. My forearms ached. The long sleeves of my uniform were soaked with sweat, sticking to the scars. "Hey, Luke." I froze. I knew that voice. It was a slimy, wheedling whisper that made my stomach turn. I looked over my shoulder. Kyle was standing near the velvet rope that separated the service area from the garden entrance. He was wearing a cheap suit jacket over a t-shirt, looking completely out of place, but acting like he owned the building. "Kyle?" I hissed, looking around frantically for Henderson. "What are you doing here? If the security sees you—" "Relax, bro," Kyle smirked, leaning against the wall. "Security didn't see nothing. I just slipped in through the delivery bay. Mom sent me." "Mom sent you?" "Yeah. She said you weren't answering your texts. She needs that cash transfer, Luke, like tonight. The landlord is freaking out." I gripped a champagne flute so hard I thought it might shatter. I told her I get paid on Monday. I can't give her what I don't have. Kyle rolled his eyes. He reached out and snagged a shrimp puff from a passing tray, popping it into his mouth. "Well, you better figure it out. You know how she gets when she's stressed. Her heart starts fluttering. You want her to have a heart attack because you're being stingy?" "I'm not being stingy, Kyle. I'm broke. I pay her rent. I pay the electric. I'm paying off the medical debt she keeps bringing up." Kyle laughed. It was a cruel, short sound. Yeah, the burns. We know. You cost a lot of money, Luke. Least you can do is pay it back. Just get an advance or something. Ask your boss." He pointed toward the kitchen doors. "I can't just ask for an advance," I whispered furiously. "Get out of here before Henderson sees you, please." "Fine," Kyle said, brushing crumbs off his jacket. "But don't come home without the money. Mom's waiting." He winked at me, turned, and slipped back out toward the garden shadows. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I felt that familiar mixture of shame and panic. I was 28 years old, and I was still trapped. I was a slave to a debt I couldn't remember incurring, bound to a family that treated me like a utility. "You, dishwasher!" I snapped to attention. Mr. Henderson was storming toward me, his face red. "I told you to restock the glasses, not loiter around gossiping with street trash," he spat. He must have seen Kyle leaving. "Get to the east wing. One of the guests spilled red wine near the display cases. Go clean it up before it stains the rug. Move." "Yes, sir," I said. I grabbed a cleaning bucket and a rag, head down, moving as fast as my tired legs would carry me. The east wing was quieter. It was a gallery, really, lined with glass cases displaying ancient artifacts. It was the private collection of Elias Thorne. The lighting was dim and dramatic, highlighting gold coins, ancient manuscripts, and pottery. I found the wine spill near a pedestal in the center of the room. It was close to a massive, intricate blue and white vase that stood on a waist-high plinth. The vase was beautiful, covered in painted dragons and clouds. It looked older than the country we were living in. I knelt down and started scrubbing the wine out of the Persian rug. My hand was throbbing now. The stress of seeing Kyle, the heat of the kitchen, the double shift, it was all catching up to me. As I scrubbed, I bumped the plinth with my elbow. It was a light bump, barely a touch, but the vase rattled. I froze. I looked up. The vase was wobbling. It wasn't centered on the pedestal. It tipped slowly, agonizingly toward the edge. I lunged. It was pure instinct. I reached out with my right hand to catch it. I had it. My fingers brushed the cool ceramic. I had the neck of the vase in my grip, but then the spasm hit. It was a sharp, electric jolt of pain that shot from my elbow down to my thumb. My hand, my clumsy, ruined hand, jerked involuntarily. My fingers opened when they should have closed. Instead of catching the vase, I swatted it. Time seemed to slow down. I watched, horrified, as the blue and white masterpiece spun through the air. It hit the marble floor with a sound like a gunshot. Crash. Thousands of shards exploded outward. The dragons shattered into dust. Silence. Absolute, terrifying silence filled the room. I knelt there, my hand still outstretched, shaking uncontrollably. I stopped breathing. I knew with absolute certainty that my life was over. That vase probably cost more than I would earn in 10 lifetimes. Linda would be sued. I would be in debt forever. "What did you do?" The scream came from the doorway. Mr. Henderson ran in, his eyes bulging. He stopped at the edge of the debris field, looking at the shattered porcelain. "You idiot!" Henderson shrieked. "You clumsy, scarred freak. Do you have any idea what that was? That was a Ming Dynasty original. It's priceless." He grabbed me by the collar of my uniform and hauled me to my feet. "I'm sorry," I stammered, my voice cracking. My hand, it spasmed. I tried to catch it. "I don't care about your hand," Henderson yelled, shaking me. "I'm calling the police. I'm suing you. You're going to jail for destruction of property. You're finished." I closed my eyes, waiting for the blow, waiting for the handcuffs. I thought about Linda. She wouldn't bail me out. She would just cry about how I had embarrassed her. "Let him go." The voice was quiet, but it carried more weight than Henderson's screaming ever could. It was a voice used to being obeyed instantly. Henderson froze. He dropped my collar and spun around. "Mr. Thorne," Henderson squeaked. Sir, I am so sorry. This incompetent temp..." He destroyed the centerpiece. "I was just about to call security to have him arrested." I opened my eyes. Elias Thorne was standing in the entrance of the east wing. He was a tall man, impeccably dressed in a black tuxedo. He had silver hair and a face carved from granite, but his eyes were dark and unreadable. He looked at the pile of blue shards on the floor. Then he looked at me. He didn't look angry. He didn't look sad. He looked intense. He walked slowly into the room, his dress shoes crunching softly on the porcelain dust. He ignored Henderson completely. He stopped 2 feet away from me. I couldn't meet his eyes. I stared at his polished shoes. I hid my hands behind my back, ashamed of the scars, ashamed of the spasm that had destroyed something so beautiful. "Show me your hands," Thorne said softly. I blinked. "Sir?" "Your hands," Thorne repeated. "Show them to me." "Sir, he's dangerous," Henderson interrupted. "He's clumsy. I told you, I'll handle. Get out, Thorne said without looking away from me. Sir? Leave us. Now. Henderson turned pale. He looked between me and the billionaire, swallowed hard, and scurried out of the room, closing the heavy oak doors behind him. We were alone. The silence was heavy. I asked you to show me your hands, Thorne said again. His voice wasn't threatening. It sounded almost desperate. Slowly, shaking with fear, I brought my hands out from behind my back. I held them palms up, exposing the thick, shiny ridges of white scar tissue that crisscrossed my skin. They were ugly. They were the mark of my debt, the proof of my clumsiness. I expected him to recoil. Everyone did. But Elias Thorne didn't flinch. He reached out with his own hands, smooth, manicured, powerful hands, and gently took my wrists. He pulled my hands closer, lifting them into the dim light. He traced the line of a particularly jagged scar that ran from my right thumb across my palm. He looked at the burn pattern on my forearms. His breathing hitched. I saw a tremor go through his shoulders. When he looked up at my face, his eyes were wet. The granite expression had cracked. He looked like a man seeing a ghost. "The vase doesn't matter," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Sir, I'll pay for it," I whispered. "I don't have money now, but I'll work. My mother, she says I have to pay my debts. I'm used to it." Thorne shook his head slowly, as if he couldn't hear me. He was staring at my scars with a terrifying intensity. "Where did you get these?" he asked. "My mother." I swallowed, reciting the story I had told 1,000 times. When I was 3, a kitchen accident, I pulled a pot of boiling oil onto myself. She saved me. Thorne's grip on my wrists tightened. It wasn't painful, but it was firm, like an anchor. "Boiling oil," he repeated. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir." "And your mother? She was burned too, saving you?" I paused. I thought about Linda's smooth, unblemished hands. "No, sir. She was fast. She didn't get hurt." Thorne let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He closed his eyes for a second, and when he opened them, the intensity was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. "What is your name, son?" "Lucas," I said. "Lucas Miller." "Lucas," he tasted the word. "Listen to me very carefully, Lucas. You are not going to be arrested. You are not going to pay for this vase." He reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a sleek black smartphone. He typed something quickly, then looked back at me. "I need you to stay here, in this room. Do not talk to your manager. Do not talk to anyone." "Why?" I asked, bewildered. "Because of the scars?" Thorne looked at my hands one last time, then released them gently. "Because," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that chilled my blood, "I have seen these scars before, 25 years ago, and they weren't caused by boiling oil." He stepped back, his face hardening into a mask of pure determination. "They were caused by a fire in a nursery," he said, "the night my son was stolen." The library smelled of cedar, old leather, and a kind of silence that money buys. It was the sort of silence that felt heavy, like a blanket woven from lead. Elias Thorne closed the heavy oak doors, shutting out the faint sounds of the string quartet and the murmurs of the gala guests. We were alone. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought he might be able to hear it. I was still holding my scarred hands in front of me, unsure whether to hide them or keep them visible as proof of my clumsiness. The image of the shattered blue and white vase played on a loop in my mind. "Sit," Thorne said. He gestured to a high-backed leather chair near a massive mahogany desk. I sat on the edge of the cushion, terrified that the grease from my catering uniform would stain the pristine material. Thorne didn't go behind the desk. He pulled a chair close to mine, sitting knee to knee with me. It was an intimate, intense proximity that made me want to shrink away. He wasn't acting like a billionaire whose property had just been destroyed. He was acting like a detective at a crime scene. "You said your name is Lucas?" he said. His voice was steady, but there was a tremor in his hands as he rested them on his knees. "Lucas Miller?" "Yes, sir," I whispered. "Look, Mr. Thorne, I swear I'll sign whatever you want. Garnishment of wages, a payment plan. I know I can't pay for the vase all at once, but—" "Stop," he said. "I told you, the vase is irrelevant. I want to know about the fire." I blinked. The oil, sir. It wasn't a fire. It was a pot of boiling oil. On the stove." Thorne stared at me. His eyes were a piercing gray, intelligent and searching. "Tell me the story. Exactly as she tells it to you. Don't leave anything out." I swallowed hard. "I was 3 years old. We were living in an apartment downtown, I think. Mom says I was a climber. I climbed up on the open oven door to reach a pot on the back burner. It was a fryer pot, full of oil. I tipped it. It came down all over my arms and hands. Thorne listened with a terrifying stillness. He didn't blink. "And then?" he prompted. "And then Mom. She grabbed me. She pulled me out from under the flow. She wrapped me in wet towels and rushed me to the emergency room. She says the doctors wanted to amputate my left hand because the damage was so deep, but she fought them. She paid for specialists. She went into debt to save my hands." I looked down at the shiny, twisted ridges of skin on my palms. "That's why I owe her. She ruined her financial life to save me." Thorne let out a long, shaky breath. He looked away from me, toward the rows of leather-bound books, as if looking for an answer in their spines. "She grabbed you," Thorne murmured. "She pulled you out from under boiling oil." "Yes, sir." "And she wasn't burned?" The question hung in the air. I paused. It was a question I had asked myself 1,000 times in the dark, but I had always shoved it down, buried it under layers of guilt and gratitude. She was fast," I said weakly. "She has good reflexes." Thorne looked back at me. His expression had shifted from intensity to something that looked like pity, or maybe horror. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, heavy cardstock rectangle. It was a business card, but it didn't have the Thorne Industries logo on it. It was plain white, with only a name and a number printed in black ink. Julian Vance, Private Investigations. He took a silver pen from his jacket and wrote a different number on the back of the card, his personal cell number. "Lucas," he said, pressing the card into my hand, "I am going to let you go tonight. You will finish your shift. Mr. Henderson will not fire you. He will not mention the vase again." I stared at the card, confused. "Sir?" "But you must promise me one thing," Thorne said, leaning in. His eyes bored into mine. "You must not tell your mother we spoke. You must not tell her I asked about your hands. You must not tell her about the vase." "Why?" I asked. "If I don't tell her about the vase, she'll wonder why I'm not freaking out about losing my job." "Tell her you dropped a tray of glasses," Thorne said quickly. "Tell her Henderson yelled at you but docked your pay instead of firing you. Tell her anything but the truth." He stood up abruptly, smoothing his tuxedo jacket. The mask of the untouchable billionaire was sliding back into place, but I could see the cracks in it. "Go," he said, "and keep your phone close." I stood up, legs shaking, and walked toward the door. My hand was on the brass handle when he spoke one last time. "Lucas?" I turned. "You have your mother's eyes," he said. But the way he said it sounded like he was talking about someone else entirely. Or, "You have the eyes of the woman who gave birth to you." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and slipped out of the library. The walk back to the catering van was a blur. Mr. Henderson was waiting for me by the loading dock, his face a mask of pinched fury. He looked like he wanted to scream, to hit me, to fire me into the sun. But he didn't. "Get in the van," he hissed, refusing to look at me. "Thorne said to leave you alone, said it was an accident due to fatigue. I don't know what kind of sob story you told him, Scarface, but if you ever step foot in my kitchen again, I'll drown you in the grease trap." "Yes, sir," I mumbled. I climbed into the back of the van, squeezing in between stacks of dirty dish racks that smelled of stale champagne and half-eaten shrimp. The ride back to the catering HQ was silent. The other staff ignored me, sensing the radioactive aura of someone who had just destroyed a fortune and survived. My mind was racing. Why did he ask about the oil? Why did he give me a private investigator's number? Why did he look at me like I was a ghost? I clocked out at 2 a.m. I walked the 2 miles to my apartment because the buses stopped running at midnight and I couldn't afford a rideshare. My feet ached, but the pain was distant, muffled by the confusion swirling in my head. I stopped at my efficiency apartment just long enough to change out of my grease-stained uniform and splash cold water on my face. The mirror showed a tired man with dark circles under his eyes and a jagged scar running up his neck. A splash mark from the oil, Linda always said. I checked my phone. 7 missed calls from Mom. 3 texts from Kyle. Mom's freaking out, "Where are you?" She says she's going to call the cops if you don't bring the cash. Dude, seriously, she's crying. I sighed, grabbing the envelope of cash I kept hidden in my freezer, my emergency fund, saved dollar by dollar for 3 years. It was supposed to be for a car, or a deposit on a better apartment. Now it was rent money for a woman who claimed to have saved my life. I walked another 6 blocks to Linda's house. It was a small, run-down bungalow with peeling yellow paint and a yard full of dead weeds. The windows were dark, but the blue flicker of the television washed over the living room curtains. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the smell of stale cigarette smoke and cat litter. "Finally!" Linda was sitting in her recliner, wrapped in a crocheted blanket. She looked frail in the dim light, her hair thin and gray, her face pinched with anxiety. But when she saw me, her energy surged. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" she screeched, muting the TV. "I have been sitting here with chest pains for 3 hours, Lucas." "Chest pains? I thought I was having a heart attack, and you're out. Doing what? Drinking?" "I was working, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "Double shift. The gala ran late." "Did you get the money?" "That was it." "No. Are you okay?" "No. Did you eat?" "Just the demand." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope. I tossed it onto the coffee table, right next to Kyle's feet. Kyle was sprawled on the sofa, controller in hand, barely glancing up from his game. "It's all there," I said. $500. That covers the back rent." Linda snatched the envelope like a starving animal. She counted the bills quickly, her fingers nimble and quick. "It's about time," she sniffed, tucking the cash into her bra. "You know, Mrs. Gable next door said she saw you walking home. She said you looked like a hobo. It's embarrassing, Lucas. After everything I've done for you, the least you could do is present yourself with some dignity." I looked at her. I really looked at her. She was lighting a cigarette now, the flame from the lighter illuminating her face. She took a deep drag and exhaled a cloud of smoke. Then I looked at her hands. They were holding the cigarette and the lighter. The skin was pale, wrinkled with age, and spotted with a few liver marks. But it was smooth. There were no ridges of scar tissue, no discoloration from skin grafts, no tightness. She pulled me out from under the flow. I imagined a pot of boiling oil, 350 degrees, hot enough to melt skin on contact. If she had reached into that cascade of liquid fire to grab a screaming toddler, her hands should have been destroyed. They should look like mine. "Mom?" I said quietly. "What?" she snapped, not looking away from the TV. "When the accident happened, the oil, did it hit you at all?" Kyle paused his game. "Dude, why are you bringing up that old stuff? You're being weird." Linda froze. She turned her head slowly to look at me. Her eyes narrowed into slits. "Why do you ask?" she said, her voice dropping an octave. "Are you implying something?" "No," I said, backing down instinctively. The conditioning was deep. Mr. Thorne, the guy who owns the house I worked at, he saw my hands. He asked if you got burned saving me." Linda's face went white, whiter than the smoke hanging in the air. "You talked to him," she whispered. "You talked to the billionaire?" He saw the scars," I stammered, remembering Thorne's warning. "I dropped a tray. He asked about my hands. I told him you saved me." Linda stood up. The blanket fell to the floor. She marched over to me and poked a finger into my chest. "You listen to me, Lucas Miller," she hissed. "You don't talk about our family business to strangers. Rich people like that, they like to twist things. They like to make trouble for poor people like us." "Did he say anything else?" "No," I lied. "He just asked, that's all." She stared at me for a long moment, searching for the lie. Then she scoffed and turned back to her chair. "Of course I didn't get burned," she said, her voice shrill now, defensive. "I was fast. Adrenaline is a powerful thing. God protected me so I could take care of you. And this is the thanks I get? Interrogation at 3 a.m? "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "Go home," she waved a hand dismissively. "Kyle needs to sleep on the couch and you're blocking the TV. And don't forget, the electric bill is due next Tuesday. You need to pick up another shift." I looked at Kyle, who was already unpausing his game. I looked at Linda, who was counting the money again, just to be sure. I turned and walked out the door. The night air felt cold on my face. I walked toward my apartment, my mind churning. God protected her? Physics didn't work like that. Boiling oil didn't care about adrenaline. I reached into my pocket to find my keys, and my fingers brushed against the thick cardstock Thorne had given me. My phone buzzed against my leg. I stopped under a flickering street lamp. It was 3:15 a.m. Who would be texting me now? I pulled the phone out. It was a message from an unknown number. The area code was local, but it wasn't a number I recognized. I unlocked the screen. Unknown number. I didn't want to wait until morning. I had my investigator pull the archives immediately after you left. My breath hitched. A second message popped up. Unknown number. I found the police report from your address in 1998. There was no kitchen accident reported. There was no ambulance call for a burn victim at that house, ever. I stared at the screen, the blue light illuminating the scars on my thumb. Unknown number. But there was a report filed 2 weeks later. A neighbor reported hearing a child screaming in the basement for 2 days straight. Police responded but found nothing. Linda claimed it was the TV. The world tilted on its axis. The street lamp seemed to dim, screaming in the basement. I looked down the street, back toward the peeling yellow bungalow where Linda was sleeping with my money in her bra. A third message appeared. Unknown number. Come to my office tomorrow. 9 a.m. I think I know who you really are. The diner was called Patty's, a 24-hour grease trap 3 blocks from my apartment. It smelled of burnt coffee and desperation, which made it the perfect place for my life to fall apart. I sat in a corner booth, my back to the wall. Across from me sat a man who looked like he cost more than the building we were sitting in. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, and wire-rimmed glasses. He hadn't touched his coffee. This was Julian Vance, the name on the card Thorne had given me. You look tired, Lucas, Vance said. His voice was calm, clinical. He opened a manila folder on the table, but didn't spin it around for me to see. I got a text last night, I said, my hands wrapped around a mug of hot water. I couldn't afford the coffee, and my stomach was too knotted to handle the caffeine anyway. From Mr. Thorne. He said there was no police report. Vance nodded. We checked the archives for the entire county. On the date your mother claims the accident occurred, there were 0 emergency calls to her address. No fire department, no ambulance, no police. She said she drove me, I whispered. She said she drove me to the ER herself because it was faster. We checked the hospital admissions, too, Vance said gently. Lucas, there is no record of a Lucas Miller being admitted for severe burns in 1998, or 1997, or 1999. I felt the room spin. That's impossible. I have the scars. I had surgeries. She talks about the bills constantly. Vance leaned forward. Have you ever seen the bills? What? The medical bills. The debt she claims to be paying off. Have you ever seen a physical invoice? A statement from a collection agency? I opened my mouth, then closed it. She handles the finances. She says it stresses me out. Lucas, Vance said, his eyes locking onto mine. I want you to think very hard. Have you ever seen a photograph of yourself before the age of 3? I tried to conjure an image. Linda's house was full of pictures. There were dozens of Kyle. Kyle at T-ball, Kyle at graduation, Kyle eating cake. There were pictures of me, too. Me at my high school graduation, hiding my hands in my gown. Me at 10, looking sullen. But a baby picture. A toddler picture. No, I realized, the word tasting like ash. She said they were lost in a move, or water damage. I don't remember. Vance slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It wasn't a document. It was a list of questions. 1. Where is your birth certificate? 2. What represents the medical debt you are paying? 3. Why are there no photos of your infancy? I can't help you until you want to be helped, Vance said quietly. Mr. Thorne believes you are the victim of a crime, but until we have proof, you are just a young man with a difficult mother. You need to find the truth, Lucas. Not for Mr. Thorne, for yourself. He stood up, dropped a $20 bill on the table to cover my free water, and walked out. I sat there for an hour, staring at the list. I went to Linda's house around noon. I knew Kyle would be asleep, and Linda would be resting her eyes in the recliner before her soap started. I needed to play this cool. If I stormed in accusing her of kidnapping, she'd shut down. She'd cry. She'd make me the villain. I needed to be the dutiful son one last time. I unlocked the front door. The house smelled of lemon pledge and stale smoke. Linda's attempt to cover up the smell of the cigarettes she claimed she had quit years ago. Mom, I called out. In here, she yelled from the living room. She was sitting at the small dining table, sorting through a pile of mail. When she saw me, her face tightened. She was still suspicious from last night. I hope you're here to apologize, she said, sniffing. The way you spoke to me, asking about the accident. It really hurt my feelings, Lucas. I know, Mom, I said, forcing my shoulders to slump. I'm sorry. I was just tired. Henderson was riding me all night. She softened instantly. Oh, honey, I know. They work you so hard. It's not fair. You work yourself to the bone, just like I did for you. Yeah, I said. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of tap water, trying to keep my hands steady. Actually, Mom, that's why I came by. Henderson said there's a new regulation for the catering license. Since we work with alcohol, I need to submit a primary ID. Driver's license isn't enough anymore. Okay, she said, dragging out the word. I need my birth certificate, I said. Just for a day. I have to scan it and send it to HR. The change in the room was instantaneous. The air left the room. Linda stopped sorting the mail. Her hands froze over a coupon for detergent. She didn't look up. "You don't need that," she said. Her voice was flat. Dangerous. "I do, Mom. Henderson said if I don't upload it by Friday, I can't work the next gala. That's a $300 shift." "Tell him you lost it," she snapped. "Tell him you're ordering a new one." "Why can't I just use mine?" I asked, taking a step toward the hallway where she kept the important papers file cabinet. "It's in the filing cabinet, right? I can just grab it." "No!" She slammed her hand down on the table. It was violent, sudden. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the linoleum. "You are so irresponsible, Lucas. I keep that document safe for a reason. It is fragile. It is the only proof of who you are. If you lose it, do you know how much it costs to replace? Do you know the paperwork?" "I won't lose it," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm 28 years old. I think I can handle a piece of paper." "You think you're so smart," she shouted, her face flushing red. "You think because you hang around rich people now, you're better than me? I wiped your butt, Lucas. I sat by your bedside for weeks while you screamed in pain. I gave up my life for you." She was crying now. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times. The tears were real, but the intent was tactical. It was designed to make me feel small, to make me feel indebted. "Mom, please," I said. "It's just a paper." "It's not just a paper. It's trust," she wailed. "You don't trust me after everything I did. You're listening to strangers. I knew it. That billionaire put ideas in your head, didn't he?" She clutched her chest. "Oh, God. My heart. It's fluttering again. You're killing me, Lucas. You are literally killing your mother over a piece of paper." Kyle appeared in the hallway, rubbing sleep from his eyes, wearing nothing but boxer shorts. "Bro, what is your problem?" Kyle groaned. "Why are you always yelling at her? Just leave it alone. Can't you see she's sick?" "I just need my birth certificate," I said, looking at Kyle. "Don't you have yours?" "Mom has it," Kyle said, shrugging. "Who cares? Why do you need to see it so bad? You think you're adopted or something? Look at you. You're just as ugly as the rest of us." I looked at Linda, clutching her chest, sobbing dry, heaving sobs. I looked at Kyle, indifferent and lazy, and for the first time in my life, the guilt didn't work. The hook didn't catch. I realized Vance was right. There was no birth certificate. There never had been. "I'm sorry, Mom," I lied. "I didn't mean to upset you. Forget it. I'll tell Henderson I ordered a copy." Linda stopped crying almost immediately. She sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Good. That's a good boy. You worry me, Lucas. I protect you. That's my job." "I know," I said. "I'm going to fix the drip in the bathroom sink while I'm here, to make up for upsetting you." "That would be nice," she said, sitting back down. "And maybe pick up some pizza later? I don't feel up to cooking." "Sure, Mom." I went to the bathroom. I turned on the faucet to create some noise. I sat on the edge of the tub and waited. I waited for 2 hours. I heard the TV go on. I heard the pizza delivery guy arrive. I had ordered it on my phone. I heard them eat. And finally, around 4 p.m., I heard the heavy, rhythmic snoring that meant Linda had taken her afternoon nap. Kyle had gone back to his room to scream at his video games. I opened the bathroom door and crept into the hallway. The filing cabinet was in Linda's bedroom, but I knew the birth certificate wasn't there. If it existed, she would have flashed it to shut me up. If she was hiding something, it wouldn't be in the top drawer next to the electric bills. It would be in the basement. The basement was an unfinished dirt floor dungeon that smelled of mold and secrets. Growing up, I was forbidden from going down there. "The stairs are unsafe," Linda always said. "With your clumsy legs, you'll break your neck." I opened the basement door. The hinges whined, but the sound of Kyle's video game covered it. I descended the wooden steps. They groaned under my weight. It was pitch black down there. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dust motes. The space was filled with junk. Old Christmas decorations, broken chairs, boxes of clothes that didn't fit anyone. I moved toward the back corner, behind the furnace. There were stacked plastic bins. Most were labeled Xmas or kitchen, but on the bottom, tucked behind a rotting wooden pallet, was a cardboard banker's box. It was taped shut. Written on the side in Linda's frantic, jagged handwriting was, "Lucas, medical, old." My heart hammered against my throat. This was it. The proof of the debt. The receipts for the surgeries. I used my house key to slice the tape. I pulled the lid off. It was almost empty. There were no invoices, no insurance papers, no letters from specialists. There was a yellowed newspaper clipping. I picked it up. It was from 1998. The headline read, "Search continues for missing heir following fire." My hand shook. I put the clipping down. Underneath it was a single photograph. It was a Polaroid. It showed a toddler sitting on an unfamiliar blue carpet. The toddler was holding a stuffed bear that looked expensive. The toddler was wearing a clean white onesie. I shone the flashlight closer. The toddler's arms were already scarred. The burns were there. But the toddler looked younger, maybe 2 years old. Linda said the accident happened when I was 3. She said I pulled the pot down then. But in this photo, I was younger than 3, and the scars were already healed white. The timeline was a lie. She didn't save me from the fire. The fire, or whatever caused this, had happened before she ever got her hands on me. I dug to the bottom of the box. There was one more thing, a small, clear plastic bag. Inside was a hospital ID bracelet, the kind they put on newborns or trauma patients. I pulled it out. The plastic was brittle with age. I held it up to the light. It didn't say Lucas Miller. It was a temporary band. The writing was faded, but legible. Patient unknown male. PEDS ICU admit date OCT 14. 1996. Lock St. Jude's burn unit 1996. 2 years before Linda claimed she birthed me. 2 years before the kitchen accident. I wasn't her son. I was a John Doe she had somehow acquired. The floorboards above me creaked. Linda was waking up. I shoved the photo and the wristband into my pocket. I put the lid back on the box and slid it behind the pallet. I ran up the stairs, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I slipped into the bathroom just as Linda called out, "Lucas, are you still in there?" "Yeah, Mom," I choked out, flushing the toilet to cover the shake in my voice. "Just finishing up." I washed my hands. I looked at them in the mirror. The scars looked different now. They weren't a badge of shame. They were a receipt for a crime I didn't understand yet. I left the house 5 minutes later. I told her I had to get back for the evening shift. I sat in my car around the corner, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I couldn't breathe. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. It was the private number again. The Elias Thorne. I answered. "Hello?" "Lucas." Thorne's voice was low, urgent. "Vance tells me you didn't have any baby photos." "I found one," I whispered. "I found a photo and a wristband. The dates. They're wrong. They're all wrong." Silence on the line. Then, a voice that sounded like it was breaking. "I need you to do one thing for me, Lucas. I need you to come to Dr. Aris's clinic tomorrow morning. We need a DNA test." "I can't afford—" "I'm wiring $10,000 to your account right now," Thorne interrupted. "Just to take the swab. No questions asked. Even if I'm wrong, keep the money, but I need to know." I looked at the scars on my hands. "I'll be there," I said. The waiting room of Dr. Aris's private clinic looked more like a hotel lobby than a medical facility. There was no smell of antiseptic, only fresh orchids and filtered air. The chairs were soft velvet, and the lighting was warm and flattering, the kind of lighting designed to make wealthy people feel less anxious about their mortality. I sat on the edge of a beige sofa, my knees bouncing. I checked my banking app for the 5th time. The balance, which usually hovered around $40, now read $10.42.18. Elias Thorne had wired the money before I even walked through the door. "Lucas?" I looked up. Thorne was standing by the inner door. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo today. He wore a simple navy sweater and slacks, but he still looked imposing. He looked tired, too. His eyes were red-rimmed, as if he hadn't slept since the gala. "Mr. Thorne," I said, standing up. "I'm here." "Thank you," he said. He didn't offer to shake my hand. Instead, he stared at my face, searching. "Please, call me Elias. If this goes the way I think it will, Mr. Thorne won't be appropriate." We walked back to a private room. Dr. Aris, a short man with kind eyes, was waiting with the kits. "This is just a buccal swab," Dr. Aris explained gently. "Inside of the cheek. Painless. We'll run a rapid panel for immediate kinship verification and a full sequence for legal court admissibility. We'll have the rapid results by this evening." I sat in the chair. Thorne sat across from me. "I have to ask," I said, before the doctor could insert the swab. "The fire. You said your son was stolen during a fire." Thorne nodded, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "October 14th, 1996. A fire broke out in the nursery wing of the estate. The investigators said it was faulty wiring in a space heater. By the time the fire department got there, the nursery was a shell. They found evidence that a child had been in the fire." He paused, swallowing hard. "But they never found a body," he whispered. "There was blood. There was damaged skin tissue found on a windowsill. But no remains. The police assumed the fire was so intense. Well, they declared him dead. But I never believed it. The window was open. The screen was cut from the outside. I looked at my arms, the thick white ridges of scar tissue that I had hated my entire life. And he was burned, I said, before they took him. We believe he was burned during the abduction, Thorne said. The kidnapper must have panicked when the fire started, or maybe they started the fire to cover their tracks, and the baby got hurt in the process. Dr. Aris stepped forward. Open, please. I opened my mouth. The swab scraped against my cheek. It took 10 seconds. Then he did the same to Thorne. That's it, Dr. Aris said, sealing the tubes. I'll have a courier deliver the full report to Mr. Vance's office by 6 p.m. Thorne stood up. He looked at me, and for a moment I thought he was going to hug me. His hands twitched at his sides. Lucas, he said, do you need a ride somewhere? Do you need anything? I need to go to work, I said, the absurdity of it making me want to laugh. I have a shift at the diner. If I don't show up, I lose the tips. Thorne looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. You have $10,000 in your account. You don't need to work at a diner. I do, I said quietly. Because if I stop my routine, she'll know. Linda, she smells change. She's like a shark. Thorne's expression darkened at the mention of her name. A muscle feathered in his jaw. Be careful, he said. If she is who we think she is a very dangerous woman. I didn't go to the diner. I called in sick. I couldn't handle the noise of plates clattering. It sounded too much like breaking vases. Instead, I went to the address on the business card Julian Vance had given me. It was a glass tower downtown, the kind of place that required a security badge just to use the elevator. Vance's office was on the 42nd floor. Vance was waiting for me. He looked more relaxed today, or maybe just more focused. He had a whiteboard covered in timelines. The DNA is the final nail, Vance said, gesturing for me to sit. But the circumstantial evidence is already overwhelming. He pointed to the timeline. 1996. Leo Thorne abducted. Nursery fire. 1996. Linda Miller, using maiden name Linda Kovich, fired from temp agency for theft. Disappears for 3 months. 1997. Linda resurfaces in a different county with a toddler she claims is her biological son. No birth certificate on file. Claims home birth. 1998. Linda files for state disability benefits for her son, citing severe kitchen burns. She monetized you, Vance said coldly. She didn't just steal a child. She stole a child with injuries she could exploit. She's been collecting disability checks in your name for 20 years, Lucas. Did you ever see that money? No, I said. She said the government denied us. She said she had to work 3 jobs to pay my medical bills. She hasn't worked a legitimate job since 2004, Vance said. She lives off the state stipend for your care and whatever cash she guilt-trips you into giving her. My phone rang. The screen lit up with a photo of a cat, Linda's contact picture. I stared at it. The vibration felt like a drill against the wooden desk. Answer it, Vance said. Put it on speaker. Don't tell her where you are. I picked up the phone. Hello? Where are you? Linda's voice was screechy, breathless. Mrs. Gable said she saw you getting into a town car this morning. A black town car. Who picked you up, Lucas? My stomach dropped. She was watching. She had neighbors watching. It was a ride share, Mom, I said, my voice shaking. I splurged. My feet hurt. Liar, she screamed. Ride shares have stickers. That was a private car. And I just called the diner to tell them you'd be late, and they said you called out sick. What are you doing, Lucas? Are you with him, that billionaire? Mom, calm down. Don't you tell me to calm down. I am your mother. I wiped your burns. I fed you when we had nothing, and now you're sneaking around with rich people? They're going to put you in jail, Lucas. They're going to frame you for that vase and lock you up, and then who will take care of me? It was always about her. Who will take care of me? I looked at Vance. He scribbled something on a notepad and shoved it toward me. The settlement. I took a deep breath. I had to pivot. I had to feed the greed to stop the panic. Mom, listen to me, I said, forcing my voice to sound excited. I'm not in trouble. I didn't want to tell you until I was sure, but I'm meeting with Mr. Thorne's lawyer. Silence. Then a suspicious hiss. Why? Because of the vase, I said. They're terrified of a lawsuit. A lawsuit? She sounded confused. But you broke it. Yeah, but I broke it because I was exhausted. I lied, the words coming easier now. I was working a double shift without a legally required break, and the floor was slippery. Their lawyer says Mr. Thorne wants to settle out of court. He doesn't want the press finding out he runs a sweatshop. Settle? The word hung in the air, heavy and golden. Money? Yes, Mom. Money. A lot of it. He wants to pay me off to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I heard her breathing change. The panic evaporated, replaced instantly by calculation. I could almost hear the gears turning, calculating how many cartons of cigarettes and scratch-off tickets she could buy. How much? She asked. I don't know yet, I said. That's why I'm here, to negotiate. Don't you sign anything, she shrieked. You are not smart enough to negotiate with these people, Lucas. They will cheat you. They will give you crumbs. I can handle it, Mom. No, you can't. You are too soft. You need me. I'm coming down there. No, I said too quickly. You can't come here. It's a secure building. Then bring them to me, she demanded. Or bring me to the meeting. If there is a settlement check, I need to see it. That money is for us, Lucas, for the debt, for the medical bills I paid. It's technically my money. I looked at Vance. He nodded slowly. This was the opening. Okay, I said. Okay, Mom. There's a final signing meeting tomorrow at the Thorne Estate in the library. I'll tell them I won't sign unless my legal guardian is present. You're 28. You don't have a legal guardian, she snapped, but you tell them your mother is your financial advisor. I'll be there. Come pick me up and bring Kyle. He needs a new suit if we're going to be rich. Okay, Mom. Tomorrow at noon. I hung up. My hand was sweating so much the phone nearly slipped out of my grip. She took the bait, I said, feeling a wave of nausea. She did, Vance said. Now we just wait for the courier. I went back to my apartment to wait. It was a tiny studio with a hot plate and a mattress on the floor. I sat on the mattress, staring at the cracks in the ceiling. This was the last night I would sleep here. I knew that. One way or another, my life as Lucas Miller, the clumsy dishwasher, was over. Either I was Leo Thorne, heir to a fortune, or I was a fraud who had just scammed a billionaire out of 10 grand. At 6:15 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I opened it. A bike courier in a yellow helmet handed me a thick white envelope sealed with red wax. Sign here, he grunted. I signed. He left. I locked the door and sat back down on the mattress. The envelope felt heavy. It had the logo of the genetic testing lab on the corner. I ripped the tab. I pulled out a stack of papers. The top page was a summary. It was filled with numbers and graphs, markers, and alleles. I skipped all of it and looked at the bottom of the page. Probability of paternity. 99.998%. Alleged father Elias Thorne. Child Lucas Miller, a.k.a. Leo Thorne. Conclusion. Paternity confirmed. I stopped breathing. The paper shook in my hands. It was true. The scars weren't from my clumsiness. They weren't from a pot of oil. They were from a fire that happened while someone was stealing me from my crib. Linda hadn't saved me. She had stolen me. She had watched me grow up in poverty, scrubbing dishes to pay her back for saving me, while my real father sat in a mansion wondering if I was dead. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It hit the paper, blurring the word confirmed. Then I felt something else, something hotter than the fire that had marked me. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage. I thought about the times she had slapped me for crying, the times she had told me I was unlovable because of my monster hands, the times she had made me feel guilty for existing. She had stolen my life. She had stolen my name. She had stolen my father. And tomorrow she was going to walk into a room expecting a check. I stood up and walked to the tiny kitchenette. I poured myself a glass of water, my hand steady for the first time in years. I wasn't Lucas Miller anymore. I was Leo Thorne, and I was done paying debts I didn't owe. I picked up my phone and texted Elias. Me, I got the envelope. Elias. And? Me, set the trap. She wants to come tomorrow. She thinks she's getting paid. Elias. She will get exactly what she deserves. Come home, son. I looked at the word son. It didn't look like a lie anymore. I started packing. I didn't pack much. Just the clothes on my back and the envelope. I left the catering uniform in the trash. I wouldn't be needing it where I was going. I pulled my rusted Honda Civic up to the curb in front of the yellow bungalow at 11:45 a.m. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had turned white, blending in with the scar tissue. I took a deep breath. Showtime. I wasn't Lucas Miller, the scared dishwasher, anymore. I was a man on a mission. I touched the breast pocket of my jacket where the folded DNA results sat against my ribs like a hidden blade. I honked the horn. The front door flew open almost immediately. Linda stepped out, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from grimacing. She was dressed for what she imagined a millionaire's business meeting looked like. She wore a floral dress that she usually reserved for funerals, paired with a bright red blazer that I recognized from a thrift store trip 3 years ago. Her hair was teased high and sprayed into a helmet of gray curls. She looked ridiculous. She looked predatory. Kyle followed her, locking the front door. He was wearing a black button-down shirt that was too tight across the chest and a pair of gray dress pants that were too short. He had left the top 3 buttons of his shirt undone, exposing a gold chain that was definitely fake. They walked to the car with a swagger I had never seen before. They thought they were walking toward a lottery win. Linda opened the passenger door and slid in, filling the car with the smell of cheap perfume and hairspray. "You're late," she said, checking her reflection in the visor mirror. "Rich people hate it when you're late, Lucas. It shows a lack of respect." "We're fine, Mom," I said, putting the car in gear. "Mr. Thorne is expecting us at noon. It's a 20-minute drive." Kyle leaned forward from the back seat, his breath smelling of mint gum and stale energy drinks. "So, did you get a number yet? Are we talking 5 figures? 6? "I told you," I said, merging into traffic. "I haven't negotiated yet. That's why you're coming. To help me." "Damn right," Kyle said, punching the back of my seat. "You'd probably take a gift card and a pat on the head. We're going to bleed this guy. Negligence, emotional distress, unsafe working environment. I looked it up online. We got leverage." "A leverage," I repeated quietly. "Yeah, we have that." Linda lit a cigarette, ignoring my rule about smoking in the car. She cracked the window an inch. "I was thinking," she said, blowing smoke toward the glass. "When we get the check, we shouldn't deposit it in your account, Lucas. Your bank has terrible fees. We should put it in my savings account. It'll be safer there. I can dole it out to you as you need it." I glanced at her profile. The way her jaw set, the greed in her eyes. She was already spending the money. She was already planning how to control it, how to keep me on her leash even after I had saved us. "We can talk about banking later," I said. "Let's just get the check first." "I want a truck," Kyle announced. "A lifted one, black, with those big tires." "You don't have a license, Kyle," I reminded him. "I'll buy a license," he laughed. "Rich people don't need to follow the rules, bro. That's what you don't get. Once we cash out, the rules change." The irony was so thick I could taste it. He was right. Rich people played by different rules, but he had no idea he was sitting in a car with one of them, and he had no idea that the rules were about to crush him. The drive to the Thorne Estate usually took 20 minutes, but today it felt like an eternity. Every mile was filled with Linda's fantasies. She talked about moving to a condo in Florida. She talked about buying a purebred dog. She talked about getting laser surgery for her varicose veins. Not once did she mention my hands. Not once did she mention the accident that supposedly earned us this payday. As we approached the massive iron gates of the estate, silence finally fell over the car. Linda stopped talking about Florida and just stared. The estate was imposing, a sprawling manor of gray stone surrounded by manicured gardens that seemed to go on forever. I rolled down the window as we pulled up to the security booth. A guard in a sharp uniform stepped out. He looked at my rusted Honda, then at his clipboard. "Name?" he asked. "Lucas Miller," I said. "And guests." The guard looked me in the eye. There was a flicker of recognition, or maybe instruction. "Mr. Thorne is expecting you," he said. He didn't ask for ID from Linda or Kyle. He pressed a button, and the massive gates swung open silently. "See?" Kyle whispered, leaning forward again. "They know we're coming for them. They're scared. That's why they let us right in." I drove up the long, winding driveway lined with ancient oak trees. I parked the Honda next to a lineup of luxury cars, a Bentley, a Range Rover, and a sleek black sports car. My car looked like a piece of scrap metal next to them. "Don't touch anything," Linda hissed at Kyle as we got out. "Act like you belong here." "I do belong here," Kyle muttered, adjusting his collar. We walked up the stone steps to the main entrance. The massive double doors opened before I could even reach for the handle. A severe-looking woman in a gray suit stood there. "Mr. Miller, please follow me." We stepped into the foyer. It was breathtaking. The ceiling soared 3 stories high, painted with frescoes. A chandelier the size of a small car hung in the center. Linda gasped. Her hand went to her throat. For a second, the greed was replaced by pure awe. "Lord have mercy," she whispered. "Lucas, make sure you ask for at least 50,000. Look at this place. They won't even miss it." We followed the woman across the marble floors. Our footsteps echoed, clack, clack, clack. I saw Mr. Henderson, the catering manager, standing near a doorway leading to the kitchen. He was holding a clipboard, looking pale. When he saw me, he didn't glare. He didn't yell. He looked terrified. He quickly looked down at his clipboard and hurried away. That guy knows what's up, Kyle snickered. He knows he's about to lose his bonus to pay us. We reached the heavy oak doors of the private library, the same room where Elias had looked at my scars 2 nights ago, the same room where the truth had started to unravel. The woman in the gray suit stopped. Mr. Thorne is waiting inside, she said. He has requested that the meeting be private. Just the family. Perfect, Linda said, straightening her red blazer. She grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into my bicep. Let me do the talking, Lucas. You stammer when you're nervous. Just nod and sign where I tell you. Okay, Mom, I said. You lead the way. She pushed the doors open and strode in like she owned the place. Kyle followed, trying to look tough. I walked in last. The library was exactly as I remembered it. The smell of cedar and old paper. The dim, dramatic lighting. The wall of books. Elias Thorne was sitting behind the massive mahogany desk. He wasn't looking at papers. He was looking at the door. He sat perfectly still, his hands clasped on the desk in front of him. To his right stood Julian Vance, the investigator, holding a thick file folder. There were 2 chairs positioned in front of the desk. Mr. Thorne, Linda said, putting on her best aggrieved mother voice. She walked forward, hand extended. I'm Linda Miller, Lucas's mother. I appreciate you meeting with us to resolve this unfortunate incident. Thorne didn't stand up. He didn't shake her hand. He just stared at her. His eyes were cold, hard, and absolutely merciless. Linda faltered. She dropped her hand, clearing her throat. I assume my son told you why we're here. The trauma he suffered, the hostile work environment. We're looking for a fair resolution. Sit down, Thorne said. His voice wasn't loud, but it slammed into the room like a physical force. Linda blinked. She sat in one of the chairs. Kyle took the other, slouching immediately. Hey, nice place, Kyle said, looking around. Got a lot of books? You read all these? Thorne ignored him. He looked at me. I was still standing near the door. Close it, Lucas, Thorne said. I turned and pushed the heavy oak doors shut. They latched with a solid, final click. I turned back to the room. I didn't sit. I walked over to stand next to Julian Vance, slightly behind and to the right of Elias Thorne. Linda turned in her chair, confused. Lucas, she said, what are you doing? Come sit over here. We're a team. No, I said. My voice was steady. My hands weren't shaking. I think I'll stand right here. Excuse me? Linda's eyes narrowed. What has gotten into you? Get over here right now. Mrs. Miller, Thorne cut in. We have a lot to get through. I suggest you pay attention. I am paying attention, Linda snapped, her patience fraying. I'm paying attention to the fact that my son broke a vase because your staff overworked him. Now, do you have a settlement agreement prepared, or do I need to call a lawyer? Thorne reached into his desk drawer. Linda perked up, expecting a checkbook. Instead, Thorne pulled out a single sheet of paper and placed it in the center of the desk. I have prepared a settlement, Thorne said. It accounts for everything. Linda leaned forward, her eyes hungry. Kyle sat up straight. Does it cover the emotional damages? Linda asked. Because Lucas has been having nightmares, and my heart condition has flared up because of the stress. It covers everything, Thorne repeated. Linda reached for the paper. She picked it up, her eyes scanning it greedily. I watched her face. I watched the moment the confusion hit. What is this? She asked, looking up. This says 0? She turned the paper around to show me, shaking it. Lucas, look at this. It says $0. 0. She turned back to Thorne, her face flushing purple. Is this a joke? You bring us all the way out here to insult us? Do you think because we're poor, we're stupid? I don't think you're stupid, Linda, Thorne said softly. I think you're calculated. I think you're ruthless. I'm leaving, Kyle said, standing up. This is bull. Come on, Ma, let's sue him for real. Sit down, son, I said. Kyle froze. He looked at me. What did you call me? Sit down, I repeated. Nobody is leaving. You can't keep us here, Linda shrieked. This is kidnapping. I'm calling the police. You don't need to call them, Thorne said. He nodded toward the shadows in the far corners of the room, near the towering bookshelves. There was a rustle of movement. 2 uniformed police officers stepped out from the gloom. Their hands were resting on their belts. They didn't look happy. Linda dropped the paper. It fluttered to the desk, landing face up. Settlement offer. 0.0. What is going on? Linda whispered, the blood draining from her face. She looked at the police, then at Thorne, and finally at me. Lucas, what did you do? I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope with the DNA results. I tossed it onto the desk next to the settlement offer. I didn't do anything, Linda, I said, using her first name for the first time in my life. But you did, 25 years ago, in a nursery. The room went deadly silent. The only sound was the air conditioning hum and the terrified, shallow breathing of the woman who had stolen my life. I know, I said. And then the trap snapped shut. I showed the DNA. Linda screamed, Kyle bolted. Officers took them. Elias hugged me. I was Leo Thorne.